Thank you for gathering here today, friends. I would like to tell you about the way. Hey, Book Dragons, glad you're here. Wanted to give you a book review today on The Way of Edan by Philip Chase. You heard that right. Philip Chase, Dr. Fantasy himself on BookTube. And I am friends with Philip, but that is not going to taint my review in any way. This is going to be an honest review and a spoiler-free review. So if you're worried about having the book spoiled for you, rest assured I'm not going to give away any major details that would give away the plot of the book. So before we get to the review, please make sure, like, subscribe, join my Discord. If you want to support me on Patreon, that's awesome too. And there's other ways to support me too if you would so like to, down in the description below. And let's get right to talking about The Way of Edan. I will say right off the bat that this is a self-published novel. I will also say that this is the best self-published novel I have ever read. I am not BSing you guys. It really is. I've read not a ton of self-pub, but I've read enough self-pub that I feel like I can talk intelligently about what's good, what's not so good, what's great, and this book definitely qualifies as a great self-published novel. So I want to tell you the basics of what the story is about, and then we'll get into some of the other things like the characters and the magic and all that good stuff. All the stuff that you want to hear about a book, right? So the book takes place in the realm of Ermenland, and there is a holy war brewing across the different kingdoms of Ermenland between the Way of Edan and other more ancient religions that are now considered heretical by the followers of the Way of Edan. The Way of Edan is a monotheistic religion that is championed by a priestly class and is constantly proselytizing and more or less threatening people that if they don't convert to the way, that they're going to be considered infidels and they're going to be wiped out. So as you can tell, this is definitely a holy war that is being waged. There are warlike monks and priests that are going across the countrysides and throughout the different kingdoms preaching repentance from these heretical religions and conversion to the true way of Edan. And the king of Torlon, which is one of the main epicenters of this realm, is working with the Way of Edan to further his political interests, to take over the different minor kingdoms in Ermenland, and eventually become the sole ruler over everything. That is kind of his goal. He's very ambitious. He's very much of an ass. He will do whatever it takes, even selling his soul over to the Way of Edan to make this happen. And so the book starts out with just a really, really awesome cold open. I mean, there is just so much that happens in the first few moments of this book that sets the stage for everything else that happens in the book, because it really is a catalyst for the anger of the priesthood of Edan, especially the high priesthood of Edan. It's just a really magnificent opener to the story. Shortly after that opener, you get introduced to some of the other characters. There's only a handful of major POVs for the story, but you get to know some of the other side characters as well that play into it. One of the things that really made this book come to life was the world building. There are really great cultures that are introduced and developed in this book. The naming conventions are really good. They harken back to Old Norse and other medieval languages, and Philip is a medievalist, so that really makes sense that he is very well versed in studies of those languages. and is able to derive names for his characters and kingdoms and cultures in the book. And that was just really fantastic. Among the different cultures in this world, you're going to find humans, you're going to find elves, and you're going to find a race of people that are more or less dwarves. They're very diminutive in stature, and they're not called dwarves, but you can tell that they're basically his equivalent of dwarves in the story. And the dwarves in this story have kind of been disenfranchised, they've been displaced from their lands and their cultures and had to join up with human contingents as part of the war effort. And I just really was impressed with the way he told about their plight and helped you really care for them. Even though they are side characters in this story, I really enjoyed how they kind of became front and center and an integral part of the story. The elves are very much a hated race in this world, partly because people are afraid of them because they have lost friends and loved ones to the gaze of elves. Because if you gaze into the eyes of an elf, you fall into a deep comatose sleep, and very few ever return from it. So it was definitely a different take on elves, and I really liked that. I will talk about a few of the characters that pop up in the book. One of the main characters, in fact, probably the main character in the story, is Dayraven. He is a young boy in a small village who has been raised and trained in the art of fighting and preparing to maybe eventually one day join the war effort in Torland. And all of a sudden some people disappear into the forest, and they have to go on a hunting party to try and find their companions, and he ends up getting separated and goes on a separate path into the woods, and something happens to him that puts a type of curse on him, and it awakens a deep magic in him that many people are afraid of, and may in fact make him one of the most wanted people in the realm. One of the few people that is on his side is his great aunt, Erd, but he calls her grandmother, and I think in this respect grandmother is more of a honorific than it is an actual family relationship that he has with her. So she is his great aunt, but I think he calls her grandmother as an honorific. And she is a wise woman who lives separated from the village that Dayraven grows up in, but she frequents there every now and again, and she's not so well liked among the people there, especially the priests of the way who have made their way to Dayraven's village, and they have set up their religion and started to preach and win people over. And Erd is a witch, so she does not bode well with the followers of the way. So they very much are opposed to her, but yet they don't really want to get on her bad side, so to speak. So there is a healthy fear there of Erd, I think, that kind of keeps them at arm's length. And she is one of the few people that is really on Dayraven's side, other than his friend Imhar. So the three of them set out on an adventure to find help for Dayraven, to learn more about the skills of the magic that he's all of a sudden become endowed with. And then, of course, there are the priests of the way. There's a few priests of the way that are nice and pretty open-minded and accepting, but for the most part, it's a very militant faith, or it has become so under the supreme priest, Bledla. And I have to say, Bledla is probably one of the best villains I have read in a long time. He reminded me a lot of Saruman from The Lord of the Rings. And in fact, I could totally picture Christopher Lee playing the supreme priest Bledla. He was just so menacing and so dogmatic. He really believes that he's doing no wrong. He really firmly believes in the way of Edan, and he believes that Edan has given him a mission to destroy the infidels. It's not something that he's just doing because he can and because he has power. He really truly believes that this is the best way to spread this religion. And he's just a fascinating character. I absolutely loved him, and I can't wait to see what happens with his character, especially after the ending of the book. The characters that Philip has written are just really brilliant. The magic system in this book is simply called the Gift. It is definitely a soft magic system. There is not a lot of detail as to how the magic works, but it is very clear that it is an extremely powerful type of magic. It is strongly rooted in empathy, so people who have the gift can feel the gift in other people. They can learn to sense how powerful the gift is in someone, and different people have different levels of the gift, of course. And when using the gift, it can be used to diminish the power of someone who is currently actively using the gift. And if anybody is hurt severely by the actions taken with the gift, the person who is doing those actions can feel the pain and the suffering of those that they have attacked. So there are very definitely consequences to using the gift. And I'd never quite seen magic used in this way in a story before. So that was pretty cool. It was pretty unique, I felt. So what did I like about the book? First of all, the prose is just magnificent. Philip definitely has a command of the English language that shows in what he writes, but it's not so over the top that you're just having to look up every other word in the dictionary. It's not super purple prose or anything like that, but it is beautiful and it is flowing and it really immerses you in the story. We already talked about the naming conventions, so I'm not going to go too much into detail there. But for instance, names like Dayraven, it definitely seems like he is named in conjunction with his connection to ravens. At least that's kind of the impression I got, especially from a certain scene in the book, but I could be wrong on that. The religious conflict was really done well, and Philip definitely has a grasp on religious nuances. The Way of Edan felt very much like Christianity in so many respects, specifically the Catholic version of Christianity. And it was different as well, though. Don't get me wrong, it was different, but it definitely took a lot of influence from Catholicism, I think. I don't really have many cons for this at all. If anything, I would have liked to have found out more about why the elves are so hated. It was brought up a couple of times, but it really wasn't elaborated on. And I think I might find out more about that in the next two books, because he is releasing the other two books in stages. The second book comes out this summer, I think, and then the third book, the final book, comes out closer to October, November, I think. So we're going to get the other two books this year, which is really cool if you're looking at picking up this book, because you'll be able to finish the series this year because it's coming out all this year. So I'm really excited about that. I'm very much looking forward to reading the other two books, and so maybe that will inform me more as to why the elves are so hated and tell me more about some of the mystery around the elves. And also, I really would have liked to find out more details about what actually happened to Dayraven. There's little hints that are sprinkled throughout the book that make me kind of feel like I understand it a little bit better, but not really. So I would really like to know exactly how he came about to have the gift. And there's an indication that he kind of already has a kernel of the gift at the beginning of the book, but it is just made that much more pronounced by what happens to him. And I'm not going to say what happens because it'll spoil it for you, and I don't want to do that because it's a very significant event in the book. How would I rank this book? I've already told you guys that it is the best self-published book I have ever read, and I wholeheartedly mean that. I'm not just saying it. It really is that good, and I would rank it as a soaring book. It definitely soars for me. If you're on Goodreads and you follow me there, you may have seen that I rated it 5 stars. I really feel like it deserved that 5 star rating on Goodreads. Even though, yes, I feel like I was left wanting for a couple of things, overall, I found no flaws in this book, and I just have to say bravo to Philip for pulling off such a compelling book for his debut novel. It was just fantastic. I highly recommend it to you if you have not read it already. And also, please check out Philip's channel. He is a fantastic booktuber, very well spoken, very easy to listen to, and he's just a super nice guy. So I would highly recommend that you check out his channel. Go watch a few videos, subscribe if you want to. He's so cool. And that's going to wrap up my review, guys. Make sure that you read more books, including this one. I'll talk with you later.